The health care debate has seized the media spotlight now that Senate Republicans have finally unveiled their bill, with many news outlets criticizing both the substance and the secretive process. We're back with the panel. Molly Hemingway, New York Times headline, shifting funds from poor to rich is key for the health bill. And there are many other headlines like that. Do you have the impression the mainstream media don't much like this Senate health bill?
Yeah, they're letting it be known that they are very opposed to it. It is good, though, to have coverage that is tough on major pieces of legislation. It's something that was actually kind of missing the first time we debated this under ObamaCare, where no matter what was said in favor of the bill, it was kind of accepted reflexively, that it was deficit neutral, that it would lower health care costs. If you liked your plan, you could keep your plan. Those things were presented as fact as opposed to having media pushback. So media pushback is good. It just should probably be a little more balanced.
Ray, it's fair, of course, to point out the cuts to Medicaid and the fact that there are projections that millions could lose their coverage under this legislation. But is the press downplaying ObamaCare today and the problems with that legislation and how in some states many insurers have bailed out?
Part of the problem is the public doesn't understand the mechanics and never has. Partially because
whose fault is that?
The Obama administration did a terrible job educating the public about how the mechanics of the bill was supposed to work.
Oh,
and the news business
yes.
covered the politics more than they covered the operation of the bill. So it set up a perfect storm where now we're kind of flying blind. Which is great if you have somebody who's a good instrument-only pilot, but I'm not sure that's the situation we're in.
President Trump on Fox and Friends this morning confirmed that he had privately called the House bill mean. This had been reported by the AP, had never been confirmed. The president repeating he wants a bill with heart to come out of this process. But given that he had a big Rose Garden ceremony to celebrate the passage of the House bill he now calls mean, should that get more media attention? Is it inside baseball?
Well, that he called it mean. I think it says what the president's thinking is on this. And despite this big Rose Garden ceremony and everyone high-fiving around the House bill, a lot of members of the House, even those who voted for it, were hoping that the Senate was going to make some adjustments to it, that they weren't thrilled with it, but they knew that's what they could get, and that, oh, the Senate will start from scratch, they'll do over. The Senate bill looks remarkably like the House bill.
Well, what do you think of Ray's point that we, in general, maybe television in particular, does a less than stellar job on the complicated substance of health care as opposed to the politics of can they get 50 votes by this coming week when Mitch McConnell wants to have a vote on this thing?
Well, I was a health care reporter for about a decade, so I think I spent a lot of time covering ObamaCare and that legislation, and my colleagues now, you know, every time someone pulls out of an ObamaCare exchange, they write about it. But they also write about the Medicaid programs, the problems with it, the good problems with it. So I think outside Washington, there is a lot of substance coverage on health care right now.
All right. Now, Barack Obama, who has rarely commented directly on his successor, went on Facebook and said this bill has meanness at its core. In fact, that prompted the Fox and Friends question to President Trump. Hillary Clinton tweets, forget death panels, which was something that was aimed at Obamacare. If Republicans pass this bill, they're the death party. Now, of course, that's news, but do you see anyone in the media saying, gee, maybe that kind of rhetoric goes too far, especially a couple of weeks after the awful shooting of Steve Scalise and 4 other people?
Right, and it's not just Hillary Clinton. You saw these types of messages coming out from Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and many other prominent Democratic politicians. And it is something that I think should be of interest to the media when you're using that kind of highly charged rhetoric, accusing a party of being murderers or death agents or whatnot. We are in a time when members of Congress have been targeted for their political views by political opponents, and it is, I think, completely within the proper realm of the media to ask some questions about whether that rhetoric is appropriate, and you know they would be doing it if the parties were switched.
Yeah, I mean, she's fine to criticize it, but death party, that should at least be questioned.
Yeah, the death panel obviously was questioned when Sarah Palin came up with the term.
The death party is even worse. I mean, it's like you're pro-death.
But if nobody reports it, that's malpractice. You knew about it, Howie.
No, it has been reported, but I didn't see the next paragraph, which is some said perhaps the former First Lady went too far in using that kind of inflammatory language.
It's not just about reporting, it's about how you report it. So every time some random Republican says something in the hinterlands, every Republican is asked about it at a national stage. It becomes a 2 or 3 day story because you keep asking and you keep pushing and having larger conversations about rhetoric and whatnot. In this case, we have literally the woman who just ran for president and a bunch of other prominent people doing it, and you're not seeing big media discussions.
Let me get one other question in, which is the press has focused on the Senate Republicans keeping the bill secret until just a few days ago, not having any committee hearings, having a limited amount of time for debate. All this is fair game, but is it also what the press did when, and it's not exactly comparable, when Barack Obama tried to push through his legislation pretty much on a party line vote?
Of course, it's comparable.
Yeah.
but the parallels are a little flawed. And there was a lot more discussion in committee of the various pieces of Obamacare before the legislation came to a vote.
Both parties, it seems to me, are very hypocritical when it comes to parliamentary procedures, filibusters, committee hearings.
Really?
With the
You
other
think?
side, yeah.
You think?
But I think the media still need to call it out.
I agree, and I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I certainly know that my colleagues have. But, you know, as far as the transparency around this bill, does the process really matter to the American public? I don't really know. People are worried about losing their health care, but having covered Obamacare the first time, it was it was an exhaustive amount of hearings, discussions, debates, and that's what the.
All right, great discussion. Shannon Pettypiece, Molly Hemingway, Ray Suarez. Thanks for joining us this Sunday.